In New York City, the DA's office has tossed the convictions of over 500 people who were wrongfully convicted by dirty cops. The convictions were related to misdemeanors and 8 felonies, all linked to disgraced officers found guilty of crimes such as taking bribes, perjury, and official misconduct while on the job. The DA's post-convictions justice unit reviewed the cases, and the move comes after similar actions were taken by the district attorneys in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. The move is expected to relieve hundreds of New Yorkers living with severe costs that come with convictions, including barriers to employment, housing, and education. Rebecca, so on this, I find it interesting that we find these cases all the time. Barry Scheck and the Innocence Project, efforts like this in post-conviction justice. Why is there not a national push on post-conviction review in order to ensure that in every jurisdiction around the country, we're opening up these cases that we have with dirty cops and being able to provide justice? Because right now, if you're not in a quote-unquote liberal or progressive city, or in a city where the DA believes in restorative justice and actually wants to do something about it, it's kind of up to you to try to fight against the system.
I mean, what you're really asking is, why isn't there better accountability with our criminal justice system? And that, I mean, we could spend the next hour talking about that. And it's not, I don't want to give a pass to so-called progressive cities, because when we think about that case in Baltimore, I don't remember the person's name right now, but the reason why they're reviewing the evidence in that case is because it was on a podcast and there was new evidence that came to light, and there was public pressure saying, hey, maybe this person really shouldn't be in prison. So I think regardless if it's a conservative area or a more progressive area, we do have to do better with criminal justice reform and understanding, like, how exactly are we prosecuting people in this country? Because we know that if you have a public defender, you are more likely to go to prison. If you actually get paid for a high-powered attorney, you are less likely to go to prison, which means this is more about access to resources, and this is more about money. This isn't necessarily about justice. So it's not just in cases where you have quote unquote crooked cops, but it's in our system, period.
Absolutely. An editorial comment, since Rebecca brought up black attorneys, or she didn't, but I heard that in my head. I want people to remember that same neighborhood or family attorney that you have that helps you out when you that you call when you have a issue you want to talk about, you don't feel like paying somebody, or the same one that you ask for advice every once in a while, just off the books. When you get a bigger case, go back to them. Don't just go to them for the nickel and diamond and the free cases, and then when you get some money, say, well, I gotta get me a Jewish lawyer somewhere, because we still have that. Plies had a song said faux lawyers and they all Jews, because that's a stereotype in our community that you get better legal services from anybody who's not black. So we see black attorneys with private practices literally dying on the vine because they can't get customers. But the minute you get that $1 million slip and fall case, you run across town to take that money to somebody else. So from the black lawyers of America, take the big cases to black lawyers also. They need that money just as much as that big firm that you want to go to across the city, and you're not getting better representation there. You just like the name, you like the comfort, and you like the proximity to white supremacy that it makes you feel like you have afforded when you walk in there with a lawyer that is of a more diverse background. Eugenia, you want to hop in on that?
I mean, look, I think you said it all right there. All my lawyers black. And every lawyer I recommend is black. Actually, Robert, you practice in Maryland, right? Or just in Atlanta, or just in Georgia?
No, just in Georgia.
Okay, get that reciprocity in Maryland. We can talk some stuff.
See, you and my wife, y'all just kind of keep trying to push me. I keep trying to get out the game. Y'all try to bring me back in.
Listen, don't say listen. I just want you to be able to pay me when you lose the bet. All right, that's cool. But nevertheless, the thing is this, right? We have a responsibility to push for the most equitable, most fair, most blind justice system we can produce. I will take the American justice system over any other justice system on the face of the earth, point blank, period. But that doesn't mean that it's perfect. And part of that, moving to a more perfect justice system is, hey, when you have situations like dirty cops, your credibility's thrown out the window. We can't trust you even signing off on a traffic ticket. When you have situations of abusive or aggressive assistant district attorneys, Yeah, I think that those typically things need to be remedied. I mean, look, even today, Kevin, Randolph was found, acquitted of all four charges, right, down in Florida. I mean, he should have been charged in the first place. I mean, this is Florida. Stand your ground matters, right? And I think if somebody's coming and to shoot up the place, and you just happen to, they got tagged in the shootout, you were standing your ground. So and all that's a part of creating a more perfect justice system, which should be our end goal at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And Mustafa, part of the issue that I think people have is when you see cases like this with corrupt cops, everybody for generations has heard these stories. That uncle you had, that cousin you had who had interactions, and for a long time they weren't believed. Now that we actually have the ability to go back and fight through these cases and actually bring justice to many of these individuals, how important do you think it is that we center that in our political system? Because Republicans have been masterful at controlling language. They've taken criminal justice reform, they turned it into defund the police. You take sentencing reform, they call that liberal and progressive DAs, weak on crime, soft on crime DAs. How can we make sure that from the progressive side of the aisle, we are ensuring that it's a central aspect of the next election cycle, that we are dealing with these issues of criminal justice reform, because we can deal with everything else. I said Biden's been a great job with bipartisan legislation, but we still haven't addressed this primary issue for the African American community.
Yeah, well, I guess there are a number of different ways of getting at it. One, we know that there are a number of studies out there that show that somewhere between 5 and 10% of folks who have been incarcerated are actually innocent. So you got to bring forward those faces and those cases, one, to the American public, but two, politicians who are serious about trying to make real reform in this space have got to also incorporate those real world stories and how it has impacted not just the individual, but their communities that they come from. So you've got to socialize and humanize these respective issues if you want to counteract the disinformation and false narratives that Republicans use during campaign season, and then as a justification also for these restrictive policies that they put in forward. So that's one of the places that I would start. The other part of it is making sure that people understand that their vote truly does have power, and that if we want to have the right types of reforms, then we've got to get engaged in the political system. We've got to make sure that democracy actually works for us. And we've got to cast those ballots for individuals who will diligently fight and hopefully can actually share a narrative in a way that resonates with folks.
Absolutely. And as I said, this administration has done a great job fulfilling many of their campaign promises. We saw a Stop Asian Hate Crime bill. We saw the Respect for Marriage Act for gay and interracial marriage. We saw a $1.7 trillion infrastructure bill. We saw a $1.5 trillion Inflation Reduction Act. We saw a $3.5 trillion omnibus spending bill. We saw a debt ceiling deal that increased federal spending by $4 trillion and pushed off the issue of the debt ceiling for the next 2 years till 2025. We saw the evacuation of civilians from Sudan. We've seen the defense of Europe through NATO. We've seen the humanitarian crisis at the southern border, addressing and reversing many of the dangerous Trump policies, reaffirming of our commitments in the South Pacific, building military bases in the Philippines and in Guam. But at the end of the day, for the Black community, don't tell me you can do all of that and you can't get criminal justice reform done. Don't tell me you can be bipartisan when it comes to infrastructure, or when it comes to spending money, but you can't get voting rights done. Don't tell me you were able to get Kevin McCarthy in a room and find legislation that both Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Marjorie Taylor Greene could both vote in favor of. So don't tell me you can't do big bipartisan things, because you just did it. So now that you've shown that you can do it, you've shown you have the capacity to get it done, I don't want to hear any excuses when it comes to reforming the criminal justice system, to reforming policing in this country, to protecting Black bodies in this country, to ensuring that the base of the party, because every election cycle you say Black people are the backbone of the Democratic Party, Black women are the backbone of this party. You're even starting the election cycle in South Carolina to specifically appeal to Black voters. I don't need you to know fish fries. I don't need you to know barbecues. I don't need you to know tractor pulls or anything else, or in church basements. We need legislation that will actually solve the problem and get it done.